So picture this. It's 2018. A major manufacturer of generic active pharmaceutical ingredients makes this seemingly administrative decision.
Right. Just a minor tweak, supposedly.
Exactly. They basically just omitted a few lines of raw data from a batch record. And, I mean, they didn't even alter the final test results.
No, the final results look perfectly fine.
Yeah, they just left out the underlying messy raw data. But the fallout from that, it was absolute. I mean, we're talking a catastrophic product recall, a crippling FDA import ban, and their operations basically just ground to a halt.
It's terrifying how fast it can all
It
unravel.
really is. And that's why today we're taking a deep dive into an incredibly comprehensive guide from Validfor. It's authored by their CEO, Omer Siman, and it's all about data integrity in the pharmaceutical industry.
Which is honestly one of the most crucial topics right now.
Absolutely. Our mission today is for you, our listener, to really extract the ultimate shortcut here. We're going to cut through all the compliance jargon and look at this invisible, high-stakes digital machinery that is literally keeping the global pharmaceutical supply chain from collapsing.
Because without it, you really don't have a safe product. In the modern pharmaceutical landscape, the product isn't just the physical chemical compound in the vial anymore.
Right, it's more than that.
The product is the data. I mean, without the data proving unequivocally that a drug is exactly what you say it is, that physical product, it's completely worthless.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think everyone listening already knows that ALCOA is, the baseline expectation here.
Of course, the gold standard.
Yeah. We know data has to be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. But, I mean, applying LCOA to a static spreadsheet 10 years ago is one thing.
Oh, totally different world.
Right. Applying it today to this continuous terabyte-heavy feed from an automated mass spectrometer, that is exactly where companies are tripping up and triggering FDA warning letters.
And that friction, that gap between the foundational principles of ALCOA and the reality of these modern, highly integrated digital environments, that is exactly what Omer Siman's guide addresses.
Because the rules haven't changed, right?
No, the standards haven't changed at all. But the attack surface has just expanded exponentially. And we aren't even just looking out for malicious fraud most of the time.
It's mostly accidents.
Yeah, more often than not, it is just a breakdown in process. Like, look at the 2020 biologics facility example that's highlighted in the text.
Oh, yeah, that one blew my mind.
Right. They didn't get a formal warning letter for intentionally falsifying data. They got hit because staff were simply sharing login credentials.
Which, let's be honest, happens in almost every other corporate environment in the world, just to save a few seconds.
Exactly. Someone needs to check a dashboard, so they just use a shared lab terminal that's already logged in, and nobody thinks twice about it.
But in a regulated lab, a shared login fundamentally destroys the A in LCOA, doesn't it?
It completely destroys attribution. Yeah. Think about it. If Lab Tech 1 is just a generic login used by 3 different people on a shift, and a deviation occurs.
Like a temperature spike or something?
Right. Say a temperature parameter is manually overridden, you suddenly have absolutely no idea who actually performed the action.
Wow. So the trail just goes cold.
Exactly. You cannot reconstruct the sequence of events. The metadata, which includes all those crucial timestamps and unique user IDs, is rendered completely useless.
Wait, I want to pause on that. It's kind of like a chain of custody in a true crime investigation, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Like, it's not just about having the murder weapon or the evidence in an evidence bag. It's about proving exactly who touched it, when they touched it, and proving that it hasn't been tampered with since it was collected.
Precisely. And to an auditor, if you can't prove exactly who did what and when, well, legally, the data simply didn't happen.
And the stakes there are literal life and death. I mean, if the data is wrong, a drug batch could be way too weak to work or so strong it becomes toxic.
Which is exactly why regulators demand this level of security. And that brings up a massive operational challenge. Because we are talking about capturing metadata for every single keystroke.
Across multiple massive data silos.
Yeah. The Validfor guide actually maps out where all this data lives, and it splits it primarily into 2 buckets: laboratory test data and manufacturing and batch records.
Let's dig into the reality of that lab data first, because we aren't just talking about a finalized PDF report at the end of the day.
Not at all. Current Good Manufacturing Practice Regulations, CGMP, they mandate the retention of the raw, granular data alongside all of its associated metadata.
So you can't just keep the clean version.
No, If we're looking at a high-performance liquid chromatography run, you can't just save the final reprocessed peak area results that look nice and tidy for a presentation.
You need the messy stuff.
You have to retain the original chromatograms. If a scientist manually reintegrates a peak because, say, the software's auto-integration looked slightly off,
Which happens all the time.
right, it's common. But that manual intervention must be permanently logged, time-stamped, and formally justified in the audit trail.
And on the manufacturing side, the master production and control records, the MTCRs, they have to capture that exact same level of granularity.
Every single detail.
So it's logging the exact RPM of a mixing vat at like 2.03 p.m. alongside the specific batch numbers of the excipients used, plus any micro deviations that occurred during the blending phase.
Exactly. Every single step-by-step action requires a continuous, unbreakable chain of evidence.
I want to push back on something here, though, just playing devil's advocate.
Sure, go for it.
Looking at the sheer complexity of maintaining these electronic audit trails and, preventing unauthorized access, securing servers against sophisticated cyber threats, it's overwhelming.
It's a massive IT burden.
Right. For a mid-sized facility, validating software to FDA 21 CFR Part 11 standards takes months of capital and operational drag. So is the ROI actually there for fully electronic systems?
You're wondering if it's just defensive spending.
Yeah, exactly. Just massive defensive spending to avoid an audit. Wouldn't a hybrid approach or even highly controlled paper records just be safer and cheaper? I mean, a hacker in Eastern Europe cannot exactly infiltrate a locked filing cabinet in New Jersey.
It is a very, very common argument in the industry, and honestly, it feels like defensive spending right up until you look at the hidden, crushing operational drag of paper.
Really? Worse than IT costs?
Oh, by far, yes.
Yeah.
Paper is immune to ransomware, obviously, but it introduces massive logistical and security vulnerabilities that regulators are hyper-focused on today.
Because humans are involved.
Because humans make mistakes, and sometimes humans try to cover them up. If you run a paper-based lab, you have to utilize incredibly strict document control. We are talking sequentially numbered, paginated forms that are officially issued by QA.
Wait, so you can't just print a blank form off the network drive if you mess up a test?
Precisely. Because if a test fails, what prevents a stressed lab tech from just throwing that piece of paper in the trash and running the test again?
Oh, wow. Yeah, the original data just goes into the shredder.
Exactly. So with paper, you have to reconcile every single blank form given out. You have to manually verify that nothing was destroyed. You have physical signature verifications.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And then you have to store boxes upon boxes of sensitive data in climate-controlled, secure facilities for years. The administrative overhead is staggering.
So paper isn't actually a shortcut at all. It's just a massive operational bottleneck.
Exactly. Electronic systems, despite the setup cost, provide automated armor. They give you unalterable time stamping governed by an independent network clock. They give you encryption and audit trails that build themselves in the background without a human ever having to remember to write down the time.
What about that hybrid strategy, though? The guide mentions it, right?
It does. The hybrid strategy is capturing data electronically in real time, but periodically printing and signing static paper backups.
Kind of best of both worlds.
More like worst of both worlds, realistically. It's usually just a transitional phase. A hybrid system often inherits the worst vulnerabilities of both formats.
Oh, because you still have to manually verify that the printed paper exactly matches the electronic source data at the moment it was printed?
Right.
Which sounds like an absolute nightmare for a quality assurance team.
A total nightmare. And that's assuming everything stays strictly inside your own four walls. But modern pharma relies entirely on decentralized networks now.
Yeah, you've got third-party vendors, contract manufacturing organizations, cloud providers.
And that is a critical vector for failure. You can have a perfectly locked down server in your primary facility, but if the raw materials you just imported from a contract lab overseas come with a compromised Excel sheet.
Or just incomplete metadata.
Exactly. Incomplete metadata. Then your fortress is completely useless. You inherit their data vulnerabilities.
So what do you do?
The guide insists that rigorous audits of these third-party vendors are mandatory. Your service-level agreements have to explicitly dictate that the vendor complies with CGMP Part 11 to the exact same standard you do.
So if human error is inevitable and inheriting third-party risk is unavoidable, you basically have to build an architecture that literally forces compliance at the systemic level.
You have to. You can't just rely on good intentions.
Which naturally leads us to the defense strategy. And here's where it gets really interesting.
The governance framework.
Right. The guide outlines a very specific 6-step governance framework, building defenses that do not rely on human memory.
It starts by defining the scope, literally mapping every single system, instrument, and record type in the building.
And then step 2 is mapping roles, which fascinated me. The guide emphasizes a strict separation of powers. Like, administrator writes the ability to alter system configurations or change the network clock or delete files. Those are restricted exclusively to a handful of IT personnel.
Right. The actual process owners do not have those keys.
The lead scientists generating the data do not get admin rights. It's like nuclear launch codes. The engineers who build the rocket don't get to hold the keys that actually launch it.
It's a fundamental tenet of data integrity, basic separation of duties.
It makes perfect sense when you think about it like software deployment. In a tech company, the software developer who writes the code shouldn't have the security clearance to push that code directly to the live production server. There has to be a gatekeeper.
Exactly. In a pharma lab, the scientist running the analytical assay shouldn't hold the admin rights to alter the system's underlying configuration.
Because if a scientist can change the system clock, they can theoretically fail a test on Tuesday, rerun it successfully on Wednesday, and then just change the clock to make it look like Wednesday's passing result actually happened on Tuesday.
That is exactly the scenario regulators are hunting for. By separating the scientific execution from the digital administration, you eliminate the mechanical ability to backdate or obscure failing results.
Wow. And once that governance is locked in, you reinforce it with tech. The guide highlights ELNs and LIMS.
Yes, electronic lab notebooks and laboratory information management systems.
Let's talk about the mechanism of how those actually secure the data. Because an ELN isn't just like an iPad that you draw on. It's not just a digital piece of paper.
No, an ELN centralizes the records using strictly enforced templates. A scientist literally cannot move to step 3 of an assay until the ELN verifies that the data for step 2 has been entered and falls within acceptable parameters.
So it forces procedural compliance in real time.
It does. But the real power comes when you integrate a LIMS. A LIMS automates the tracking of physical samples, but crucially, it interfaces directly with the testing instruments via APIs.
So the LIMS pulls the output data directly from the mass spectrometer itself.
Precisely. The data flows straight from the machine into the secure database. There's no manual transcription, no human looking at a screen and typing a number into a spreadsheet.
Which eliminates typo risks entirely.
Exactly. The LIMS captures the result, the timestamp, the user ID of whoever was logged into the machine, and the calibration status of the instrument at that exact second.
The efficiency gains there are incredible. The guide actually mentions a specific case study of a contract lab that implemented ELNs with these real-time templates. They cut their data entry errors by 90%.
90% is massive.
It's huge. That isn't just a compliance win. That is a massive operational cost savings. I mean, you aren't paying your QA team to chase down missing signatures anymore.
It completely shifts the ROI conversation we were having earlier.
Yeah.
But, the guide also looks at the horizon of technological armor, specifically the implementation of blockchain for batch records.
I'm so glad you brought this up because, when most people hear the word blockchain, they immediately think of cryptocurrency volatility or, NFTs.
Right, the hype cycle.
Yeah. But the underlying architecture of blockchain actually solves one of the biggest headaches in pharmaceutical data integrity. Let's walk through how that mechanism actually works for a batch record.
Sure. So in a traditional relational database, if a highly privileged system admin really wanted to, they could technically go into the backend and overwrite a cell containing a temperature reading.
It's difficult, but it's possible.
It's technically possible. Blockchain changes the fundamental physics of the database. It creates an immutable, distributed ledger.
Meaning it can't be changed.
Right. If a company uses blockchain for a manufacturing run, every single transaction, every weight measurement, every temperature check is logged as a distinct block. And that block is cryptographically hashed and then mathematically linked to the exact entry before it and the entry after it.
Okay, so the mathematical signature of block number 4 is inherently built out of the mathematical signature of block number 3.
Exactly. So if someone tries to go back and secretly alter a 2.03 p.m. temperature reading in block 3, the cryptographic hash of block 3 instantly changes.
Which means it no longer matches block 4.
Right. The entire chain instantly breaks, and the system mathematically rejects the tampering. It takes trust entirely out of the hands of the IT admin. Retrospective alteration becomes computationally impossible without instantly alerting the entire network.
That is wild. The guide highlights a massive win using this exact technology. A large pharma company rolled out blockchain-backed records and drove their regulatory audit observations down to zero.
Absolute zero.
Zero observations. That is the holy grail for a compliance team. But as we know, a technological fortress is only as good as the processes and the humans monitoring it. If the alarm goes off on the fortress wall, who is actually listening?
That brings us to the operational reality of monitoring and auditing. You cannot just install a LIMS or a blockchain ledger and just walk away.
Right. Set it and forget it doesn't work here.
No, you have to actively measure the health of your data integrity using specific key performance indicators, or KPIs.
Like what? What are they measuring?
The guide points to metrics like the audit trail review rate. Regulators expect that audit trails are reviewed concurrently with the data itself. If your KPI shows that only, say, 40% of your audit trails are being reviewed before a batch is released, you have a massive systemic vulnerability.
They also have metrics like deviation closure time, right? Measuring how many days it takes to investigate and resolve an integrity issue, and training completion rates for the staff handling the systems.
Exactly. And to verify all of this, the guide stresses quarterly internal audits, aggressively comparing electronic records against any lingering paper trails to ensure total alignment.
But let's dig into what happens when an internal auditor actually finds a discrepancy. Say they find a batch of missing metadata. How does the organization actually respond?
This is where the KPA process gets invoked. Corrective and preventive actions. And it is vital to understand that KPA is not just a regulatory checklist, it is the industry's formal immune response.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Let's say an operator missed a critical timestamp entry. A weak organization just retrains the operator, slaps them on the wrist, and calls it a day.
But that's just fixing the symptom.
Exactly. A robust KP demands a rigorous root cause analysis.
You have to ask why the timestamp was missed in the first place.
Exactly. Perhaps the root cause analysis reveals that the software UI on that specific terminal is just poorly designed, and the timestamp button is hidden behind a drop-down menu that frequently freezes.
Oh, so it wasn't the operator's fault at all.
Right. So the corrective action is fixing the immediate batch data. But the preventive action is bringing in IT to completely redesign the UI so the drop-down menu is eliminated, making the error physically impossible to repeat.
And then you verify that the UI fix worked, update the standard operating procedures, and communicate the findings across all the facilities.
Precisely.
And that element of communication ties directly into what the guide identifies as the ultimate bedrock of data integrity, organizational culture, specifically a zero-blame reporting culture.
It is arguably more important than any software you can buy.
It makes complete psychological sense. If you are a lab tech and the culture of the company is highly punitive, like if you are terrified of being fired or reprimanded because you made a typo or accidentally deleted a row of data, what are you going to do?
You are going to try to quietly fix it or just hide it.
Exactly. And the split second you try to obscure a mistake, you have destroyed the original and accurate pillars of ALCOA. You've actively compromised the system. A zero-blame culture encourages that tech to immediately raise their hand and say, hey, I made a mistake on this entry, let's document it and correct it properly.
Transparency has to be rewarded, not punished. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, the technology is moving far too fast to rely on a workforce that is hiding its errors.
Where is it heading next?
Homer Simmons' guide looks ahead to the integration of AI and machine learning and data integrity, and it's a total paradigm shift.
Right, because historically, human auditors are just sampling data. They are basically looking for needles in a haystack of terabytes.
Exactly. But AI-powered validation tools don't sample. They digest the entire haystack simultaneously. These machine learning models are trained to spot anomalies and outliers in real time.
So they aren't just looking for blank fields.
No, it goes way deeper. They analyze behavioral biometrics and edit frequencies. If a specific user consistently reintegrates chromatography peaks on Friday afternoons right before their shift ends.
Oh, wow, because they're rushing to go home.
Exactly. The AI flags that behavioral pattern as a potential integrity risk before it ever results in a failed batch.
That's a huge shift from reactive auditing to predictive compliance.
It is.
And when you combine that with what the guide calls Industry 4.0, the integration of IoT devices and edge computing the landscape gets incredibly complex. We're talking about smart mixing vats, automated scales, and climate control systems all talking directly to each other.
Processing real-time analytics at the edge of the network rather than sending everything back to a central server.
The governance policies have to constantly evolve just to keep up with the speed at which this machinery generates data.
It is a continuous, never-ending race. The moment you think your digital environment is completely secure, the architecture of the network evolves again.
Okay, let's distill all of this down. The Validfor Guide provides a very clear, actionable 5-step plan for organizations navigating this complexity.
Let's hear it.
Number 1, define your scope and roles. You have to implement that strict separation of duties between the scientists and the system admins. Number 2, map your systems and aggressively validate your workflows. Number 3, implement rigid concurrent audit trail review schedules. Number 4, roll out continuous role-based training to foster that zero-blame culture we talked about. And number 5, utilize robust KPIs to measure your actual performance and drive continuous improvement.
It's a solid blueprint.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you? If you are a practitioner in the field, this is literally the blueprint for keeping your facility operational and compliant. But even if you are just adjacent to the industry or just a consumer, understanding this invisible architecture is crucial. The overlapping systems, the unalterable cryptographic ledgers, the predictive AI oversight, all of this highly paranoid machinery exists to guarantee that the chemical compound in the bottle matches the data on the screen, keeping the global medical supply chain safe for all of us.
It is a monumental undertaking. And, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder that pushes this concept beyond the walls of a pharmaceutical plant.
Oh, what's that?
Well, as our own personal lives become fundamentally driven by decentralized data from the wearable fitness trackers constantly monitoring our biometrics, to the digital health portals aggregating our entire medical histories across dozens of providers, our physical health is increasingly dependent on the integrity of our own digital records.
That's very true.
So, as AI becomes radically more capable of both generating and silently altering data, will there come a day in the near future when we, as individuals, need to adopt our own personal ALCOA standards? How will you ensure the integrity of your own digital health identity against undetected alteration?
Wow. That is a fascinating and honestly deeply necessary question to consider as these technologies scale. The exact same vulnerabilities threatening a sterile lab are the ones securing your personal health data. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems and the data around you, and we'll see you next time.